Hello and welcome to this very special edition of The Seventh Rule with your superstars, Aron Eisenberg and Cirroc Lofton of Deep Space Nine. Today we are going to review the Deep Space Nine documentary called What We Left Behind. Aron Eisenberg, you give it 2 thumbs up. Why?
I was muted. I didn't know you were going to ask me why right from the get-go. 2 thumbs up. Why? I was only going to give it 1 thumbs up. I gave it 2 because Cirroc was in the documentary.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
So we went to the big Man's Chinese Theater event in Hollywood on Monday the 13th. And by the way, special shout out and thank you to Levi. What's his last name? Levi.
Is it Tinker?
I believe it's Tinker.
Yeah.
Levi Tinker at Man's Chinese Theater. He really hooked it up, made it a great event. We had an awesome Q&A afterwards with Aron, myself, Cirroc, Nicole DeBoer, and Camille Calvet. There was also Kenneth Mitchell that Aron, you invited, right? Tell them what Kenneth Mitchell is in.
Well, actually, I think Nikki did and asked if it was okay. And then I obviously, touched base with Levi and he said, absolutely. So Kenneth with his friend, I think his friend's name was Jamie, if I'm correct. And I remember Jamie had a really, really badass jacket. I loved his jacket. It was on par with Cirroc's shirt. Move over a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah, he looks sharp. Look at that.
Look at that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
If you're only hearing the audio, unfortunately, you don't get to see how cool Cirroc looks. And fortunately, both Cirroc and I called each other and made sure that we wore our same hats today that we wore at Discovery Premiere.
If you guys aren't seeing this right now, the shirt that Cirroc was wearing is so good. All of the buttons are in the corresponding holes perfectly.
And he didn't even miss one. Usually he misses one. He didn't have Jerry Bono.
So it was really it helped.
Yeah, usually you had Jerry there to make sure you were dressed well. But not this time. You did it all on your own.
Yeah. So, and Camille Calvet, she did all of the makeup, or a lot of the makeup on Deep Space Nine, and also subsequently on Voyager. She's an Emmy Award-winning makeup artist. She's won like 2 awards. I think she said she was nominated 11 times or something like that. She did your makeup and Worf's makeup and Major Kira's makeup. Yeah.
Yeah, and she said she was up for an Emmy against herself.
That's right.
Yeah,
How cool was that?
Cool,
yeah. Wow. She was awesome. Camille took care of me for majority of the 7 years. There were times when I was the second fiddle, maybe third fiddle. So I had to get passed off to somebody else. So somebody else took care of me, but more times than not, she always took care of my makeup, both application and removal. And one of the things that I was so grateful to her for was that after the makeup was off, oftentimes, if there was time, she would heat up some towels for me, warm, hot towels to soothe my face once the makeup came on. And I never forgot that, just because it was such a small thing that she did, but it made such a huge difference, from wearing makeup all day and then having it removed after the 12th or 15th hour. So she is phenomenal. I love her dearly, and I'm so glad she was able to make it that night.
Yeah, it's the little things, huh?
Yeah, it's the little things. That's what Cirroc used to say.
Aron really loves those warm, hot towels at the end of his massage. I mean, at the end of his makeup.
Wow, Cirroc is getting dirty. Dirty Cirroc. Dirty Cirroc. Just couldn't keep it clean.
I couldn't. No. Hey, by the way, Ryan, you were dropping some F-bombs at the premiere a little bit. A couple of them.
What did I say? Like fantastic and
yes, fantastic, fun,
fabulous,
family.
Did I really? Sorry, like the Q&A.
You guys can call each other after we're done.
I know Cirroc is coming at us today.
Oh yeah,
Ryan.
I got arrows.
Yeah, man, he's coming in with arms swinging.
I guess
at least his Wi-Fi is working, right, Ryan?
Yeah. So I guess I said a couple bad words when the microphone was under my mouth during the Q&A. I don't even remember.
Sometimes it happens, but that's kind of a natural thing when you're doing things. You can just leave it.
Who are you talking to? What was that? Oh.
What?
Okay, so let's get right into it. This photo was taken beforehand. All of us were on the Q&A panel other than Kenneth Mitchell. I really wish he would join the Q&A. That would have been great to have him.
He should have.
Those of you who don't know, Kenneth Mitchell plays 3 different Klingon characters already on Discovery. One was Kull, the big villain at first, and then another one was like the grown-up albino Klingon that had the time crystals that Cirroc loves, and then another
I think Kenneth brought a time crystal to the premiere. Yeah, I think he showed me. He showed me his time crystal.
He brought his time crystal.
He's a real time crystal. I like that guy. Here we go. See, I started it off, and Aaron's going. No, I love Kenneth. He's awesome dude, man. We got a chance to hang out with him when we were in. Where were we?
Where I saved you, Birmingham.
Yeah, where you saved me.
Yeah.
From that bus.
What bus? Okay, we got to hear this story now. We have to hear the bus story.
Oh, we told this story, didn't we?
We told the story. Let's be very briefly, Aaron yelled, "Watch out for that bus."
I don't even think I said that. I just
you said, "Ah!"
Yeah, I think I just screamed at you.
It was a scream.
So
that I heard. It caught my attention, and it actually did stop me from stepping further out into the street when a bus was coming by at about 40.
It's a true story. And
I do remember that story now.
All the people there, the fact that I saved Cirroc's life.
No, well, he made an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, look at your clocks now. This is the moment at which I just saved Cirroc's life. So after the announcement, that was the part that I felt was a little bit unnecessary. But yes, You did save my life, Aaron, and I appreciate it. And I think, thanks a lot, buddy.
You're welcome, man. I love you.
Wow.
And the funny thing is, this is 100% true.
Just so you guys know, Aaron.
Let's be very clear. But I mean, in all jokes aside, it was really scary because when we come out of this auditorium and we walk to our hotel, literally there is a street behind this arena that is open to regular cars just coming through, where normally I think we're used to coming in the back of an arena. That's where trucks come or they drop things off, loading and unloading and what have you. But that wasn't the case. And as you're walking towards the hotel from where we exit, there happens to be a building right next to the street. And it can give you if you're walking next to it, which we all were, it gives you a blind corner. And because we're in England, obviously the traffic is on the other side. So we are used to looking to our left and seeing if traffic's coming.
So I was looking to my left, okay, I've got clear right away.
Yeah. And well, I don't know if you were really. Yeah, I guess you might have been. Yeah.
But I was looking to my left because I obviously wasn't looking at the bus coming this way.
Yeah, and I did yelp. I yelped. I don't even think words came out of my mouth because he literally stopped with one foot at the curb, and then this bus, truck, whatever went.
It didn't slow down a little bit, by the way.
What?
The bus driver. I had a good view of him as he went, and he didn't even attempt to slow down. No, he didn't. And we should go find him. You remember what he looks like. I know exactly. We need to make a description, get a little pencil outline of what he looked like.
We need to find him. We need to remind him how to slow down.
Yes. After I fully pay you back for saving my life.
You don't owe me a dime.
We got that on record. Thank you.
You don't owe me a dime. But I get to say this story until the end of days.
If you had to duplicate that shriek, Aaron, what would it sound like?
We'll find it in one of these episodes.
Yeah, it was like it was one of those where you try to say something, but there's not enough time to really say anything, so you just kind of go, like that, like to grab the attention. And I my God, thank God it did, because literally, if he took one step, he would have been hit by this truck.
Wowie.
I'm not kidding.
It's actually kind of true. It's actually kind of true.
Yeah.
Kind of true.
Which would have made for a very bad convention.
It would have been awful. It would have been awful. It really would have. But anyway, here we are. So yeah, that's a funny story that I will always get to tell. So we should retell this story on every episode of the Seventh Rule.
Yes.
That sounds great.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
So moving forward, now that we've gotten that portion of the show out of the way, let's talk about what we left behind, which was, in my opinion, an A+ documentary. And I've seen a ton of documentaries because I'm a big dork. And this was an A+ documentary. I really enjoyed it. I've seen it twice now. I'm sure you guys have seen it at least twice, maybe thrice. Wow. Cirroc?
Yep.
You sat down, you enjoyed the show. What did you think of it?
Well, I like the doc.
Right on cue.
Right on cue. So I guess I'll jump in.
Yeah, let's go over to you, Aron. What did you
think? Good thing we didn't leave Cirroc behind in England. It's interesting to hear you say you give it an A+. I do too. And I think because of how enjoyable it was and how emotional it was. And it's interesting to, our perspectives are so different, yours and mine and Cirroc's. And I would put Cirroc and I somewhat in the same group in the fact that it's a show that we were on versus a show that you were a fan of. And the perspective on watching the documentary is, one, did you feel it was fair and honest? And as I was speaking on the mission log, they brought up a really good point. They said it was entertaining, but what I think they were trying to say, but was it informational? Meaning, it felt like that. Is it fair that it came from Ira, the creator, or obviously Michael Piller, started it all with Rick Berman and Ira, and then Ira took over and took it and then it became what it was. And I think he had a goal, from what I got listening to him in the doc. He had a goal to kind of give some love to the actors that I think he appreciated so much for doing the work that they did, and telling his as well as the other writers' stories. And it was very entertaining. And one note that I picked up in my last discussion was they were saying it was entertaining and funny. And we are not known for being funny or really entertaining. We don't have all these bloopers of everybody goofing around.
Like Next Generation.
Right. So people think of us as the serious show. Oh, they don't have a sense of humor. I don't know if people really believe that. But
and Michael Dorn is, famously always says that when he went from Next Generation, it was like a big goof-off show. And then when he joined Deep Space Nine, he said it was just like this quiet, somber mood, and everybody was all serious and all that. So you definitely don't have the reputation for being a funny group. That's true. It's good that you guys got to show that in the documentary.
Yeah, and a lot of it about the documentary that also, and I don't know if I would say this is being critical of in my last discussion with the other two, critical of the documentary, but it seemed focused on why the show wasn't well received and how it was negatively received by the fans, especially in us reading the letters that people wrote, saying how awful this is and that, and I can't believe you're doing this. And I think that was a really good perspective actually to show, because as I've heard, and I think you heard, Ryan, a lot of people didn't know that. A lot of people who are even watching the show now and see it all the way through and go, wow, this is a great show. They don't know that back then people were like, this show is awful. This is not Trek. This isn't Trek.
That's right. And then when we did the Q&A, I kind of made that joke, but I meant it seriously. It's because we didn't have Twitter back then.
Right.
So back then, people would just mail into the network. Nowadays, when somebody, and so we didn't even know that they were doing it. I had no idea. But nowadays, when somebody has a gripe with a show, they turn into the mob mentality or the pitchforks. They start saying, hey, guys, we hate this, right? We don't like this. Come on, let's all get together and retweet and mob and do all this stuff.
Right.
And so it's the same mentality as before, where they didn't like something new and something different, like what we're seeing with Discovery or what other shows come up, even Enterprise back then in the JJ movies.
Game of Thrones right now, this week.
That's right. But back then, people would just be upset. They'd tell their friends and they'd mail into the show. Nowadays, it's the same mentality. They just have the means to tell the world and to create that mob mentality. But it was great. It was great to see all that stuff because most fans had no idea, and I'm sure you may not have had any idea about it either.
Well, yeah, I didn't back then, and I started to learn about that by going to conventions. And I used to feel kind of sad. I'm like, wow, how do you guys not feel that this is Trek? I said, Star Trek is this jewel. And on this side of the jewel is the original series. Over on this side of the jewel is TNG. And now you have a whole new facet to look into this world, and you're refusing to look just because it's not going from point A to point B. And as Jeffrey Combs said in the doc, he was so spot on. He's all, we're not trekking out there, we're trekking in here. We're going through the human experience. We're learning to, it's all about relationships. And that's was great for us as recurring guest stars because we got more work because they had to bring the stories into the show. But in regards to the doc, did you feel that it wasn't informative enough and it was too comedic in a sense and too much about why people didn't like the show? I think that's what the other criticism I was hearing. It was too much about, hey, this is a great show and these are the things people were saying, but there was so much more to our show. And I think some of them wanted more in-depth detail, specifically maybe about each season, if you will. But
then we wouldn't have anything to do.
Correct. Yeah.
But to answer your question, I think it's true that the fans are looking for something different in a documentary than the people that actually worked on the show. The people that worked on the show want accuracy. They don't want it to be misrepresented. They want, hey, Cirroc's back. So we're talking about the difference between what the fans want in a documentary and what, the cast and crew of the show want in a documentary. And the difference, I think, is that you guys want to be accurately portrayed. You don't want to be misrepresented. You want the show to be, accurate and informative and fun. Whereas the fans, when we're watching it, number one, we need it to be entertaining, of course. Which is why they added all the humor, and that was great. But the other thing is, we're watching it because we loved Deep Space Nine. We love Star Trek. We love Deep Space Nine. We love the characters. So we want this documentary to pay its respects to Deep Space Nine, to be a sort of homage or a love letter to Deep Space Nine. We don't, we wanted to celebrate Deep Space Nine more than we want to hear,
celebrate.
Yeah, more than we want to hear like really intricate little details, because we could look that up on Wikipedia or we could check interviews here and there. They have 2 hours. Make it fun, make it interesting, celebrate Deep Space Nine, make it a love letter to Deep Space Nine so that the fans can enjoy all this one last time. And that's why I think it hit it out of the park for me personally.
See, that's really neat to hear. That's really neat to hear how it felt for you. And I was just thinking, and I'll finish this because I want to hear what Cirroc felt about it. I felt it also showed a family. It showed all of us and our perspectives and what we experienced during that. And some of them, were very similar and some were very different. And you saw a lot of vulnerability in people as well. Mark Alimo, Terry being very honest. And a lot of honesty in that. And I think what it really did was it really kind of opened up and shined a light in our experiences on the show, which I don't think anybody else could have done other than Ira and Dave and Kai and the whole group. I think Ira started with a goal, right? He wanted to give something to the actors. That's exactly what he said in the documentary.
Yeah.
And then it morphed into something a lot more than that. And I think one of the greatest touches that they did in this documentary that made it even more entertaining was getting into the writer's room. Because even as an actor on the show, I didn't know that process. I wasn't invited into that process. Not that I should be invited into that process. I think it's best that the actors are left out of that process so the writers can do their work. They can bounce ideas. They can figure out what stories they want to tell and then give it to us. And it's our job to tell those stories to the best of our ability. Mm-hmm. And I love that whole season 8. And I loved how they interspersed it in a way. It was kind of similar right, to a serialized show with individual episodes with
Absolutely.
actors talking and speaking about the various thoughts and feelings going through the show, you know?
And for me as a fan, and also as somebody that works in this industry and does some writing and some producing, that was actually the biggest highlight for me with that documentary. That was the most fascinating aspect, was watching the writer's room stuff. And that's, I think, what would make it interesting to people that aren't even necessarily Star Trek fans. Like, I was immediately thinking, dude, other people should be checking this out other than Star Trek fans, because it's, even if you've never seen Star Trek before, you can still appreciate a documentary that shows camaraderie and, you know, all the hurdles that they had to overcome as writers and producers and people that weren't liking it, and all these different personalities and how well they meshed together.
Right.
And then seeing, you know, the process in the writer's room, all that's fascinating. I mean, it's more fascinating and entertaining because we're Star Trek fans. But even if I wasn't a Star Trek fan, I would have enjoyed that documentary. And that's why I think, another reason I think it gets an A+ is because it hits all of those things that we would hope for in a good Star Trek documentary, you know?
And you're very critical too.
Yes, I am.
and to give it an A+ is, you know, you didn't say an A, you didn't say an A-, you said an A+, which is quite high. I mean, you can't get higher than that, I don't think, unless you go an A++.
Yeah, well, the reason I would give it such a high mark is because I can't, off the top of my head, immediately think of something that I would change to make it better.
I can.
So,
I can.
let's hear it.
Don't kill Nog.
No, I was fine with that.
No, I was cool with it too. I thought that was a good teaser.
That's great.
Really good opener for season.
Thanks. You know, you didn't have to fix your Wi-Fi. You don't have to just jump right in and say, yeah, I think it was great that they killed Nog. That was perfect.
No,
That's
I mean,
the story arc.
what I mean they had the viewer captured. I was like really interested to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And that to me was like the perfect teaser for that kind of a situation. You know,
absolutely.
So, you know, is Nog really dead? We don't know.
You know, I think it's perfect that Cirroc is like,
I mean?
he's like the Quagmire of Family Guy. Like, anytime somebody says something perverted and Quagmire pops in, he goes, giggity, giggity, goo, or what, you know, he says, giggity, goo, you know, and then Cirroc, anytime someone says Nog dies, he pops up, he's like, oh yeah, so deal with that.
Yeah.
It's funny how his Wi-Fi worked just in time, you know?
Yeah, you know. Funny how those things happen.
Well, I have to agree with you that if that was the teaser for season 8, I definitely would have been hooked into the show. Go, wow, this is great. And it was kind of funny that Nog's captain's chair was a bit smaller.
Well, you're the captain. They better custom make it for you.
But it was animated, guys. Yeah. It wasn't, you know, this animated captain's chair.
But you know, if there was a starship, they would have to go, we got to fix that chair.
You know what? The one thing I could say that I would like more of is I feel like I could have had more Avery in the documentary. So
oh, yes.
They tried.
I know. I'm just saying.
So hard.
I'm just saying that's what I could have had more of.
I agree.
So
I think everybody wanted more. I mean, he was the heart and soul of that show, and Cirroc, obviously, you know, you were a branch of that main tree, you know, which is what gives you such great insight on the show and the main storyline, which was, I think, family in really relationships, as Aron said earlier. I think everybody wanted more Avery because he was the heart and soul of that show. Yeah. But maybe you can give us insights on the documentary, since you were part of that main storyline. What were your overall thoughts of it? Like, what did you like best? What did you think they could have given more or less of?
Oh, well, I mean, I liked best the moment with the Mark Alimo. That just stands out to me as like the big contrast between how they perceive things. And I thought that was one of the things. And that really speaks to a lot of other things, is basically what reality is and how we perceive reality. So there's the collective reality, And then there's the individual realities, like, you know, from the inside out. And each individual, when you watch the documentary, has their own take on things, their own reality that they supplement the collective reality with. And that's one of the things that, for example, and we're going to talk about it later with this episode, Past Prologue, was Andrew Robinson and how he views his character as Garrick. And one of the things he talks about is, you know, he always brings up the fact that he thinks Garrick was, you know, gay, and that he was flirting and hitting on Bashir's character. And now rewatching that episode, it certainly comes across that way,
right?
When you think of it the way he thinks of it through his lens, which I had no idea of, and completely never heard even the concept until after we wrapped the show. So it's kind of a hindsight thing. It's almost like that's his reality, that's his perception, that's what he was, the lens he put on in order for him to kind of feel the scene and adapt to the character. So I thought that was interesting. Aaron, what do you think about that?
Yeah, you know, I actually, when I watched Past Prologue today for
no spoilers.
No, I won't. For our next episode, I was writing down about relationships, and I was looking back, watching it the same way, and I did hear that theory before, though. I have heard that theory several times. So it was
while we were doing the show, or before?
No, not during the show. No.
Okay.
No. Over the years at cons, you know, whispers in the shadows that Garrick is a gay Cardassian, and the mystery surrounding him. And so it was really great to get that validation in the documentary. Also, and it was great that you know, Ira talked about it and regretted not pushing that further. And he says, imagine what we could have done. And then he's asked, but do you think Paramount would have approved it? He's all, we'll never know. We could have at least tried. And it's like, you know, even writers have that same, I should have tried this. I should have went for it. So it was really great to hear that. And it was also wonderful, as we were talking about earlier, and on another note, I loved hearing how the positive thing of our show, especially when it comes to women, and how influential it was to young girls or other women. And the little girl who wants to be a scientist, and the little girl that goes, I like Kira, and she was spot on what Kira was all about. And she was like 7 or 8, and she was dressed as Kira. That was beautiful to me. And we talked about Avery, and I love that they kept in that when he was holding, and that was something I don't know if a lot of people noticed, and that little girl was on stage with him, and Avery was holding her hand while he was talking to her, and she goes, what was your favorite mission?
Yeah, he was holding her hand.
Yeah, and I was like, see, I don't think a lot of people see that little touch of warmth and beauty that he was giving. And then he says family, you know, and to me, that was one of the big positives of the documentary, and really showing our family. Mark Alimo, when he said those things about, you didn't tell me I was good, I was like, you felt that too? You really? And it was like, wow, we're all so similar, us actors, you know? And so
Cirroc, how much feedback did you get when you were working on the show?
I didn't get too much feedback because when I wasn't on the show, I'd be at school and I would, you know, just be around my classmates, and most of them just called me Star Trek. They didn't really.
Really?
Yeah, they'd call me Star Trek if they didn't know my name.
It seems like Avery was giving you a lot of coaching and feedback, and that almost seems like really the most of what you actually needed on there is just kind of like him being a mentor and that kind of father figure, and you guys playing off each other so well that maybe you just didn't really need it from the other kids at school, you know?
Yeah, Avery gave me more than feedback. He gave me like instructional things to do, like this is, you know, and also let me be comfortable with how I perceive things, or let me take the kind of risk that I felt like the character needed to take. So he was really good at making me feel comfortable and allowing me to just feel like I had free reign to kind of to create on my own. So I think that was good. I remember Aron and I going over scenes and just seeing how we wanted to play scenes and rehearsing a lot, and we give each other feedback. Just like, hey, let's play it like this or let's play it like that. And we did that many times, rehearsing for large scenes that we were a part of. But most of the feedback I get now, really the majority of the feedback is from the fans.
Mm-hmm.
That's from going to the conventions, talking with them, hearing how the characters have impacted them, how the show's impacted them. That's where the feedback comes. I think one of the guys that came to the premiere said that he had joined the Navy. Was it?
Yes,
the gentleman that was in the second
right to the left. Yes.
Oh, that guy's so nice.
He stood up. And he was. He just expressed how impactful the show was and how it helped make him make a decision to join the military and be part of the Navy. I think it was. Yeah. And I just think when you hear stories like that, when you hear people tell you that they became a scientist or they became a writer or they became this or they do this or it affected them, helped them go through a transitional time of loss in their life or whatever they're dealing with. I think mental illness came up in the discussion.
That's right.
And people have dealt with mental issues and have found characters and situations that they can relate to that help them with their own mental issues. And I think a lot of that is just speaks volumes to the depth and the well writing, the well job that the writers did on the show. Aron, what do you think?
One of the things that gentleman said that he was so excited to share, and he really wanted to tell people that this show has everything to help you wherever you're at if you need it, to give you that joy, to give you that inspiration. If you're this, if you're that, if you're going through this or you're going through that, there's an episode for you. He was just so excited about Deep Space Nine. And Cirroc's right. We are fortunate. We are so fortunate to be actors in this world of Star Trek, to go to conventions and hear these things from the fans. As I mentioned, the documentary veterans telling me how much Paper Moon has meant to them, how much it inspired them, how much it helped them. I mean, you just don't get that opportunity to really hear that and get that kind of validation. And sure, that's I guess a bit of an ego thing on well, I'll speak for myself on my part, or like, oh, I'm so glad that something that I did had such a positive effect. We do like to hear that. I mean, I think everybody likes to know that in some way we've made a difference in someone else's life.
In their life. That's pretty big. A role that you did 20 years ago actually affected people's lives and life trajectories for the better. I mean, that's huge. That's got to be amazing to hear.
Yeah, and it's interesting how that's juxtaposed, right, with all the letters that we're all reading in the documentary, right, of how much hate. And hate is such a strong word, and I'd rather not. I shouldn't use that word. They were frustrated. I would say they wanted another TNG, and here's something completely different, and so they lashed out pretty harshly. Not they as in Paul. But in the letters that were
I got a side note that Rick Berman wrote all the letters that you'll see in the documentary. So that'll be interesting for you guys out there.
I feel like some of those people
throwing shade at Berman.
I feel like some of those people
once in a while,
letters. I feel like
that. If you love somebody, you can throw.
This is true. I love Rick. He gave me a job for 7 years.
He gave me a job, and he treated me with a lot of respect.
Same here.
And I have nothing bad to say about the man.
I feel like some of those people that wrote those letters are still saying things like that. Like, I feel like I'm reading those same words 20 years later, like applied to Discovery or applied to new things. I'm like, I'm sure I've read this guy's work before. You know what I mean?
Well, it's exactly like what Nikki said in the documentary. She said, I came into this and I know not everyone's going to like me. I know that there's gonna be many people out there who are not going to be a fan of my character and or me. And I really, really liked what Ron, I think it was Ron, it might have been Junie Lowry, said about Nikki. how she was fearless and brave to come into this show knowing there's only one season left, step in to Terry's, have to take over for Terry.
Nobody's going to really want you to be there and welcome. It's not going to be the most welcoming environment.
And
so it's difficult.
Yeah, and she did it. And I didn't realize that either until I watched the documentary the first time when we were, it was at the premiere at Paramount, I think. And I go, wow, I never thought of that when Nikki came in. Because I remember working on the show just thinking, oh, we've got a new person on the show. Yay, she's close to my age. We'll be friends. And then, so I got to tell this little story about Nikki because I kind of alluded to it at the premiere of the documentary that we were all at. So Cirroc and I play this middle finger game for years, right? And so Nikki comes on the show. I'm like, oh boy, a new person to play with. So the day, I don't remember when it was, but I was goofing around with her, and I thought I made her mad. Now, if I make somebody mad, I feel really bad. So I have to go fix it. I got to fix it. See, sometimes some other people like Cirroc will be like, whatever. I'll see her tomorrow. I'm sure it's fine. Me? No, she's upset. She's upset. She's mad at me. I can't lose her friendship already. So I go to her trailer at the end of the day and I knock on the door and she's about to leave. She's like, got her bag. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up, Aron? I go, oh, hey, how's it going, Nikki? I feel like I upset you and I made you mad and I'm sorry. Cirroc and I just goof around and maybe I took it too far. And she goes, oh yeah, no worries. Oh, I got something for you. She reaches into her purse and she goes,
yep.
And I go, all right, game on.
Very good.
So hats off to Nikki for the courage and the strength to come on that show and knock it out.
Hats off to her for giving you the finger. Nikki gave Aron the finger, and hats off to her. She is a real brave child.
She's not the first, and she won't be the last.
But one thing, Ryan, I wanted to say was, and I thought you pointed this out when we were at the panel for the doc. That I think that they were really honest about when they went through checking off the boxes, and Ira said, yeah, we covered this, we took on these issues. And I thought that they were honest about saying, yeah, we touched on this, but we didn't really take it on. And they took a check off of the box as far as, I think that one was for, what would you
LGBTQ.
say? LGBTQ, right? Mm-hmm. And they say, yeah, we touched on it. We did have a scene with the two women kissing, and we weren't afraid of it, but we didn't take it on. We didn't say, all right, we're gonna really expand on this. We're gonna really push the envelope. And I felt like that was one of the things the documentary did that was honest, and it was self-evaluating in that way, saying, okay, we can't say we take credit for this. We're not going to take credit for pioneering in this particular way. We will say that we touched on something, but we didn't, blaze the trails. And the other thing was that they did mention serialized television, which is or serialized storytelling, which is kind of a concept that I don't think really got home for me while we were doing the show. Same. I wasn't really aware of the impact of this kind of storytelling not having really been done before. So that was another thing that kind of showed me, okay, these guys really took a real risk by leaving the audience in a place where if you didn't see the last two episodes, then you weren't current here, which is what Game of Thrones now is known for.
All shows.
And pretty much all of the newer shows are known for, right? Yeah. Where you had standalone television before that, which is like, each episode contained, the kid borrows the car, crashes the car, fixes the car, end of episode. Next episode starts from scratch all over again.
Right. X-Files, though, did a very good job of serializing their entire run of their show with individual stories in between. They did a very good job, and they were on the same time we were. But point. I will be honest, I didn't realize it either. I didn't realize how trailblazing Ira and the whole group of writers were. And I love that they touched upon that conflict between Ira and Rick, and how they came to terms in that is amazing. And then you also see after our show, they try to go, well, in the second year, right? Second or third Voyager came on. They try to go back to TNG themed show with Voyager, and
Right.
took their days off of us. But I loved hearing Rick talk, and I also liked hearing Carrie McCluggage talk a little bit. I'm like, oh, that's the big chief. That's the big guy. I think I had to park his car one day, if I remember. But
I used to go see Carrie a lot.
oh, really?
Yeah, Carrie's office was right over in the executive branch over there next to the on the way to the commissary. So I'd stop over there and see Carrie. He went to UCLA and USC, and so when I started to go to UCLA, I asked him a few questions about, just what it was going to be like. And so he was always patient with me, took time out of his day to literally just see me on a spontaneous walk-in on his office. And I would do that once every two months or so.
Oh, wow.
And I thought he was very generous and really kind to take that kind of time with me. He actually wrote me a letter of recommendation for UCLA when I was applying.
Wow.
So
he was a fan of Star Trek. He was a fan of the show. I thought that he was.
And he's a great guy. And we would sit down in his office sometimes for an hour and just shoot the shit and talk about sports.
On company time. Great.
It was great. So he's a really nice man, actually. And hearing some of the decision-making process behind the scenes was interesting for me, too, specifically when it came to Avery and the bald head with the goatee and how that chain of command kind of finds its way up to Carrie and what the thinking is behind that. And he gave his honest, I thought, explanation, which is controversial in its own way, but it's still honest. And, they didn't want that image coming off of Hawk, starting on Deep Space Nine. They made it clear. And Avery took offense to that, I think. Just that the idea of that, where, an image can follow you or, that this particular imagery is offensive in any type of way, or carries any value of, let's say, the street. So I think those are interesting arguments that we can have as far as, Avery already had as far as expression of yourself, as far as certain stereotypes that still exist in the business to this day. Those things still exist. And I remember having a sit down with Brian Fuller, and Brian was talking about, the conversation came up about auditioning, and I've had this experience myself where casting directors may say to me, can you be more ethnic, or can you, and they will find ways to describe what they're saying, black it up for me, or be the stereotypical black character that we're used to seeing, which is, and I take offense to that because, because that it assumes that to be black is to be this kind of way. And so this kind of discussion happened, and I remember explaining to Brian at the time, because he said, well, what's offensive about that? And I explained to him, I said, well, it's the same as if, someone were to say, can you be more gay when you were to audition for something, as opposed to saying to me other things about the character that would
qualities.
Yes, that would inform me to why they are a certain way. So this person is more flamboyant, or this person is more loud, or this person grew up in this kind of way and these are his role models. Then I can make the assessment to make adjustments. If you want me to be more street or ethnic or whatever it is, then give me some information, that I can deal with. This guy grew up in a street gang, or this, or he went to jail for this. Give me some more background information, as opposed to, can you just
some background information that you can use as a tool to create that character?
Characteristics, qualities of the character.
Right.
Not
a general stereo.
Not just a 1 to 10 on street level.
Yeah. So if you ask somebody, can you be more gay? That's offensive, in my opinion, just as it is to say, can you be more black? Because there is no one definition of what it is. tell me the kind of person that you're talking about, and then I can make the kind of relative adjustments.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think people are insensitive to that, especially when it comes to Black characters in film and television.
And to Avery's, to your point, and to Avery's credit, when you're talking about how they kind of wanted a certain look, and they didn't want him to have like the hawk look. They wanted like maybe like the softer look or whatever I think was the word they used. Mm-hmm. To Avery's credit, he took the role, he played it beautifully, and he did what a lot of actors do, especially the good ones. He made the writers adjust to him. They wanted a commander of a space station, not a captain. The role is not a captain. It's not a captain. But they had to adjust because he held so much gravitas, and they weren't talking to a commander. This was a captain. This was a man. This was a leader. So they adjusted the writing and they changed the rules. I think what he said was something to the effect of, yes, you can only have a commander, on a space station.
And a captain is on a ship.
This is the exception. And then it's the same thing. He wanted to go with the shaved head and the goatee. They said no. A couple seasons later, who wins that one? He did. They adjusted to him. And that's to his credit. I think
he made reference to that at one of the conventions. He made reference to
to
the fact that you can't change who I am by changing my hair.
Totally.
So basically taking the bald head and the goatee away from him won't change who he is and how much power and energy he can bring to the role.
And you know what? I think they adjusted their writing. I think the writing for his character did get better when they accepted that. When they let him shave the head, when they let him grow the goatee, when they added the defiant, when there were just all these certain elements, it seems like they almost like gave in and just said, all right, let's just write the shit out of this thing. Let's just make this thing awesome. Sisko is a badass. The Deep Space Nine is awesome. They've got a badass little ship. Like suddenly it was almost like they just let go and said, you know what, let's just go for it,
I don't know. In past prologue, watching how he handles Kira and how he communicates and how he navigates through all these new people that he's now in charge of, I thought he looked like a captain from the get-go. But then again, I'm like, well, what does a commander look like then? Like he's constantly stumbling. I don't know.
The way he acted made them adjust to him. They had to change to fit him.
To me, the commander, the captain is the energy, the presence of the energy. We'll talk about in past prologue, but he confronts the knob, really seriously in that episode, where he's like,
a little more seriously than I would have expected. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. You're not going over my head. I'm not playing that. I'm not playing these games here.
None.
And I think that, going back, because I remember now, through the conventions and all of these conversations, that they originally wanted Sadiq or Bashir to be the captain at one point.
I heard that.
And now watching these episodes, I can't see him being the captain.
Totally. We've been spoiled.
Especially after that Garrick scene.
With the hands on his shoulders.
He was very nervous. He got very nervous when Garrick came around.
Yeah.
He didn't know where to put his hands because he did one of these.
Is it me, or is Mary Wiseman's character written based off of Bashir?
Very similar.
Tilly, right? Tilly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tilly.
Actually, I think Cirroc even said that.
I said it when we were watching the documentary.
Yeah, when we were watching the documentary.
I just said it now. What are you talking about? I didn't hear you say it during the documentary.
Something. It's another repeat.
But I wasn't sitting next to you.
No, you weren't. But I have a witness. Ryan, did I not tell you that when we were sitting there?
It doesn't matter.
No,
I said it
yes,
now.
Yes, you did.
I said it now before you. You even brought up Bashir. You had your opportunity to tie it into Tilly. You didn't. I did.
You did on record.
Hey, on record. He said it to me.
Right now.
He made a lot of remarks during that documentary, but that was one that was positive.
Yeah, but I said it here on record.
Thanks for highlighting that for everybody.
You know what I realized I am to Cirroc? I am Newman to Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes, you are my Newman. Hello, Newman.
Hello, Jerry.
You're the Kramer. You gotta bounce your head a little bit. Just move that hair.
Wow!
There it is.
All right, I have a question for you, Ryan.
Oh boy, here we go.
I know you probably want to wrap up this episode of talking about what we left behind. What did you think was missing? Did you think anything was missing? And is there any? Did you leave going, man, I wish they touched upon this, but I can't really call on it because they touched upon so many different points of the show with all the characters, all the actors, as well as people that did a lot of the work behind the scenes. Herman Zimmerman, Kuda's, the whole special effects crew, even, and I love this part, even Jonathan West and how he shot it. And they were able to do certain things for this doc because of the way they shot it. And he goes, I knew that was in there. And that was stuff I didn't even know about. And when they said, I think this was in the roundtable afterwards, right? And I'm asking way too many questions of you all in one thing, so I apologize.
It's okay.
So, but even Jonathan, he only saw the dailies, right? So when he got to come in during their color correcting or bringing in the HD and making it, as they showed Quark and Nana on the scene, and then they went wider because it was shot wider, and he gave extra room even though they were going on TV. And that was all to Jonathan West's credit. I was fascinated by that. So they gave so much in this documentary. They didn't just talk about what people didn't like. They talked about a lot of wonderful things. But did you feel anything was missing? Did you want something you didn't get?
Yeah, so while you were asking that, I kind of gave it some thought. And one of the reasons for me giving it such high marks is because nothing comes to mind that could make it a better documentary. This was one thing I did notice the first time I watched it, less so the second time. But the first time I noticed that I just wanted more in general. Not more this, not more that, just more. And that after watching a 2-hour documentary, I could have literally sat there and watched 2 hours more. I wasn't bored. I wasn't ready for it to end. And that's probably the highest praise you can give a documentary, is that you could have watched it for twice as long. So what it was missing was just more time, more documentary. Now, they had to cut it into 2 hours, apparently, and that makes sense. And we get it, because you'd rather leave them wanting more than bore them at the end. So that being said, within the 2-hour confines, if they said, keeping it at 2 hours, would you have taken stuff out and added stuff in to replace it? Is kind of what we're saying. Because when you're saying, would you've liked more of something, you'd have to take something away. And so the answer is no. I think it was perfectly done. If anything, if I would cut one thing out, and this is just from a fan's point of view, I noticed there were still a couple things that didn't shed a positive light on certain actors or certain aspects of the show. And that does make it interesting. But for me as a fan, I'm a little bit less interested in finding out little bits and pieces of drama and more into just paying the respects to the show. So if anything were to be cut out, I would say cut out anything that didn't show it in a positive light. There's enough rumors and enough things to not have it in a positive light. I'm happy just seeing the fluff, just seeing the cool stuff, the 98% of it that was just about how fun and how great it all was and how silly the letters were written, and I thought it was great. That's why I give it an A+.
Cool.
98% is an A+.
I can say that I brought my friend Ivory with me, and
yes,
he's not a Star Trek fan, so he doesn't watch any episodes.
I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, so he has no idea of anything in the Star Trek universe other than that it's a sci-fi show. But he sat through the documentary, really interested, and he told me afterwards that even though I've never watched Star Trek before, watching the documentary really gave me insight on what it's about.
Yes.
And I felt like, so he said, I feel like I got to know you better, because I don't really know what you did on the show or what impact it's had since. And so I think that it actually gave him, as a complete outsider, non-sci-fi, non-Star Trek person, he was really interested in it, and I can see that he was willing to sit there until the very last bit of it.
Wow.
So I thought that was interesting because it's hard to get somebody's attention, especially when they're not a Star Trek fan, to sit down and watch 2 hours plus of a documentary. So I thought they did a good job with that. The other thing I wanted to mention was I wish that they gave me one little bit more of the process of before Deep Space Nine came about. Like,
good call.
Development, huh?
Why did they want to make Deep Space Nine?
That's a good call.
You know, where did the idea or the origin of the idea of Michael Pillar?
Yeah.
I've heard about Brandon Tartikoff. I'd like to know the origin of what made them say, "Hey, we need another Star Trek series. It's season 5 of Next Generation, and we'd love to get another thing." Was it the numbers? What made them go in a direction to choose a black captain as opposed to this? What were the decisions being made to kind of make them lead that way? That would be one thing I'd like to know. And the other question I'd like to see touched on a bit more is why they didn't make a movie.
Yes.
And I remember hearing that. I think that was the most asked question for like the first 5 years after we finished. The first 5, yeah. Are you guys going to make a movie? How come you're not making a movie?
When is it your turn?
Yeah, that's all I heard after the show wrapped was, are you guys going to make a movie? Are you guys going to make it? Every fan wanted to know, are you going to make a movie? When's the movie coming out? Why aren't you making a movie? And I've heard a lot of different, Aaron, you can get into it, but there's been a lot of explanations.
Oh, I'll get into it.
Why I've heard that they haven't made a movie, but I think they didn't touch on why they didn't make a movie long enough in the doc. That's all. Those are the two.
Excellent point about pre-production. That was good call. I was trying to think what was missing, and I couldn't think of anything either. As Ryan, I was like, I can't. Everything was touched upon. Everything, the good, the bad. I love that. I felt Ira was fair and even. And one of the things as you were talking about the check marks. Remember, they didn't put an X. They didn't put an X next to that. They just put a question mark. We didn't go far enough. We could have done more. We didn't ignore it. But we didn't go far enough. And I felt he was very honest. And one of the things you want, right, in a documentary is that honesty. So I like that. I liked that he was honest. But good call, the pre-production. We didn't know anything beforehand. And I wonder if there's footage of it, but they ultimately realized, look, it just doesn't fit because this is what I want to do. And it just doesn't really have a place in it. Because it did have a whole arc about, and they even touched on politics. You touched upon it. And that was, I think, controversial. I remember being in a premiere, I don't know which one. And when that came up, somebody walked out. They got very upset about the politics added in there. So while they're not going to talk about why they're doing that in the documentary, I want to know if they went back and forth. Should we make this point? Should we not make this point? And I'm glad that they did make this point, and as well as what you said in the documentary as well. I'm trailing off. There was something else you were mentioning.
Movie.
Oh, the movie. That's it. So when after the show and people were saying that at cons, I was like, no, it's not going to happen. And the reason I always felt that was because our show was the black sheep of the family. We weren't iconic. As Armin pointed out, you walk into creation, there's William Shatner, there's Picard up there up on the wall, but you don't see Avery Brooks, right? You don't see that. Deep Space Nine didn't feel like everybody was talking about it. After the show. So if you put a movie forward, right, that movie has to resonate not just to Star Trek fans, but to others that are going to come to see it and go, oh, well, I want to see that. And because I don't think Paramount supported our show enough, it didn't get that enough in the public's eye. Therefore, they're like, well, the movie's not going to do very well. Even the numbers were down compared to TNG, and we'll just keep doing TNG until we keep going. And I think we were just kind of sandwiched into this. And they didn't do Voyager either. They didn't do because Voyager wasn't as
they stopped doing movies after that, at least for the other series.
Correct.
But one of the reasons that I had heard previously was that the last movie hadn't done so well.
Maybe.
The last two,
the last two movies didn't do so well, and therefore they didn't want to get committed with big overhead on a series that wasn't being talked about as much as the other series. So,
and maybe I'm just being cynical. Maybe it had nothing to do with that, and it had to do all with numbers, as you just mentioned, which I would prefer that be it. But it's interesting, as you had heard at cons, we hear those things, we hear those negative things. And so then I just start to develop an idea that if I was a producer, I'm like, well, all these negative things are going on. Why am I going to invest X amount of dollars if they're not even going to go see it? Even the fans themselves,
Even though our show was set up for a movie by the ending.
Totally.
I thought it was the perfect ending to kind of now go into the movies and start explaining like the search for Spock, what's going on, where is he, what's happening. I thought that was a perfect opportunity, but I never felt like like you said, the buzz was big enough. The hype.
That's a good word, buzz. Yeah.
Yeah, because they made a very good illustration of this in the doc, where they laid the magazine covers, and you talked about it in the talk. We were kind of covered over, sandwiched in between two shows. And we never really had our own stage to stand on for a period of time.
Correct.
We were always in the shadows of some other show.
Yeah. And they had to bring Worf in.
Totally.
Paramount told them bring somebody else in. We got to spice it up. And they didn't have to spice it up. And I love that everybody was honest about it. And they were honest about it, but there was not one slight towards Michael Dorn because it had nothing to do with Michael Dorn.
Yeah.
And I love Nana's honesty. I thought I was going to be relegated to second. I'm working on this character. I'm doing all this great stuff. We were building so much, and all of a sudden they bring him in, and now I'm like, well, what am I now?
Very similar kind of character and position. That's why.
Exactly.
Well, and it reminds me of what Nicole was facing walking into a show that's already gelled together and having to just make your space.
Yeah.
And Michael Dorn, coming off of another show, having to walk in our show, I mean, I think he really did a seamless transition, but he still had to create a space for himself. And he still had to say, I'm here and I'm going to be doing what the hell I do. And you're going to like it or not like it, but I'm going to be doing it either way.
And I always thought Michael Dorn really disliked me. I always thought he didn't like me. And
I thought he didn't like me either. I think I think that's Dorn's style. He kind of leaves you on edge whether he likes.
I think Dorn doesn't like me either.
But he directed us in the Cards, and I so remember this. We were doing a scene. He came in and said, Aron, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I didn't even think you knew my name, in my head. And I'm like, he's so nice. He's so nice. I love him. He's so nice.
No, and I totally feel for him because I've seen him. I remember we did this last con, and I saw him on stage with the Next Generation crew, right?
Right.
And he's laughing, and he's joking, and he's the heart of the party, and him and Patrick Stewart are slapping fives. And then he sits on our panel, and he's like this. just like I can't wait to get out of here. These guys hurry up and finish. I got somewhere to be in an hour. I want to eat something, and I'm grumpy. And I'm like, so he clearly likes being on Next Generation. His experience on Next Generation was clearly
I mean that's a product of
and that's natural. That's normal. That's not like
And TG was loose. They were loose and goofing around.
That's what he says. That he says I like the vibe on the set because we were more playful and joking around, and everybody kind of took shots at each other. And then you get on our show, and everybody doesn't know whether they like each other.
But you know what? The problem was we should have told Michael to hang out with us. We could have gotten him goofing around, going to the Voyager set with us, playing the middle finger game.
I think Michael is the one that told on us when we saw us eating those wings.
I think it was Kate. Kate goes, who's that little orange guy? Get off my ship. Exactly. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can tell you from a fan's perspective that I would have loved a Deep Space Nine movie. I really want, and I was one of those people asking that, is there going to be one? But they just stopped doing movies period. They just put that away. And so any chance that it had, which would have been amazing, you know, an hour and a half or 2 hour epic movie of what happened to all the Deep Space Niners that went all in their different directions and such. Also, to the point about the development of the show, of the series, I've heard that originally, you know, they wanted something that was kind of like the Old West, you know, the Old West in Star Trek, like an outpost, you know, like a town in the Old West or something. Now they couldn't do that on Earth in the future. So they said, well, why not make it a space station out in the middle of nowhere? And so that's why it kind of has that, you know, that Old West feel of like just this town out in the middle of nowhere, like a tombstone or something like that. And if you'll notice, and this is another thing I love about the show, the theme song, the introductory, you know, theme song, if you just listen to that, that's exactly what it sounds like. That lone trumpet sounds like all by itself in the vast reaches of space. Next time you check it out, just really listen to it, and it's like these space sounds, these big epic space sounds, and this one lone trumpet with the echo, and the echo makes you feel like there's just nothing else there. And it has this sad but, you know, strident or persistent feel of like, look, I'm all alone, but, you know, here I am. Here's my home.
There's a pride to it, like a real.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. And later on in the third or fourth season, they filled it out a little bit more to have more trumpets, I believe. I remember noticing a difference in the sound. It filled out. Yeah. But those first couple seasons, perfect. It's definitely my favorite theme song.
Gunsmoke in space.
Yeah, well, you know, the original pitch for the Star Trek was it Wagon Train or?
Yep, Wagon Train to the Stars.
Did you say the Star Trek?
No, the original pitch for Star Trek, the original series.
I know, but I think you said the original pitch for the Star Trek. Said that.
That would be fine if I did, as a matter of fact.
I love when Avery said that. The Star Trek.
The Star Trek. It makes perfect sense to me. But yes.
Back when I was working on the Star Trek. You kids with your Star Trek.
Didn't Carrie McCluggage get replaced too right after? I think I heard that was also a reason why, or possibly a reason why DS9 didn't have a movie, because he either stepped down or somebody took over, and the person that took over was not really a Star Trek fan. Nah, we're done.
No, that's not. I don't think that's not the case. No, because if the movie would have been wouldn't have been under Carrie McCluggage, it would have been under Sherry Lansing. She's doing the motion picture department.
Oh yeah, and she was a huge fan of mine. She loved Nog. Yeah,
she loved you. And then the guy who took over, I think, was Jonathan Dolgen, who came after Carrie, if I'm not mistaken. But neither one of them stopped the making of the movie. That wasn't the case, I don't think.
Oh, okay. I'm completely wrong.
Well, I think we've got just a couple minutes left, or less than, you know. I think we already went over, but that's okay. I think we love talking about this kind of stuff.
One thing I will say is, though, Ryan, since we got a couple minutes, is they added a little bit on the doc, right? Mm-hmm. The first doc that I saw, compared to this last, what we left behind, they added a round table with the producers of the doc at the tail.
Editors.
Yeah, the editors and producers.
Yeah.
Which you got a chance for the fans and the people who spent money on, you know, raising money for the doc, got a chance to see how the process worked and got a little bit more insight. I'm sure they'll probably add that like as a DVD
absolutely
footage for a disc when it comes out. But I thought that was interesting. Another thing that I want to mention is that I think it was the longest trailer of names that I've seen see ever, which is like got to be a Guinness record of some sort. So, and at least we have the most names in a doc.
But I loved how they were still able to add more info with Nana and Ira goofing around. That was perfect.
And they actually covered how come you didn't talk about this, which is like, I mean, you know, which is just genius for the doc itself to talk about what it's not talking about.
Yeah. It's smart because then they're covering what they didn't cover.
Exactly.
So they're actually doing it.
And I loved how they made fun of themselves, with Alan Marine, that one, the greatest moment ever.
Yeah.
And I also liked how when they were talking about the LGBTQ, and they said, but we had Prophet and Lace. And then Ira said, we did it all wrong. We did that all wrong. Should have been a drama. And Sid, I remember he said it should have been a drama. He wanted it to be a drama, but they wanted to go for humor.
At the time? You mean at the time?
Well, I don't remember where I was talking to him about that, but he told me, I was going to make it a drama, but they were adamant about being a comedy. He goes, okay.
Did Sid direct that episode?
Yes, I believe he did. I'm almost positive he did. I should check.
It's interesting. They didn't mention the time when Sid changed his name, because it was one of the weirdest things. Everybody was calling him Sid or Sidig. And everything was cool. And then one day I said, hey, Sid. And he said, it's Alexander.
Yeah, now it's Alexander all of a sudden.
And it was like, but yesterday was Sid. No, it's Alexander. And I'm like, okay, all right. We'll get used to this new thing. But they didn't mention the name change that much. But they did mention the fact that Sid and Nana had a kid together, which was a big deal on the show when it was happening.
And I was correct. He did direct that episode.
He did direct that episode.
I love Sid. And that's something that, we didn't touch upon him at all during the doc, but I love
Garrick
listening to him talk. Oh, did he?
No, I'm just making a joke. Garrick touched upon him.
He wanted to. He wanted to.
Thank you.
I love listening to Sid. He's got such a great energy. I really like him. He's a great guy.
And he's so in tune with what he was going through and how he was feeling. I really like that about him. But I also see some of the youth in him that he's now kind of matured past.
Mm-hmm.
But now rewatching the show, he was really young when we started, and you could see that in some of the mannerisms that he has. He's certainly aged to be more confident and more mature in his character.
He mentioned how he had such a wonderful arc, where he's chasing Jadzia, right? And he says she's out of his league, and then it comes to full circle to Ezri, where it's a perfect match, And I'm like, and I don't know that yet because I haven't watched the whole show, so it'll be really fun to watch that journey. It's really interesting to watch the documentary, and now we're actually going to watch our show for the first time all the way through.
Right, which is great because just like with the Andrew Robinson thing, I get to see scenes through kind of different lens than I had seen them previously. And even knowing Nicole's experience when we finally get to the time when she's on the show, I'm going to feel it in a different way than I felt it at the time.
Exactly.
So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. We're in a really great spot to start this. Really the timing is perfect for us to start what we're doing on our show, watching DS9 after us experiencing the doc, not only as people within the doc, but now watching it and hearing what everybody else had to say and all the other things that we weren't party to, that we didn't know, because we were goofing around playing the middle finger game.
Yeah, and it was good also that variety. They showed the variety shoot that we did, and there was a moment that wasn't in the doc, but it was my first time seeing Rick Berman since we finished.
Same.
And I remember when he first walked into the room where we were taking those photographs. I think I'm the first one that he saw, and he was kind of trying to be
incognito
when he walked in the room. And I caught his eye, and I said, "Hey, I know you. I know you." And he gave me the smile, his patent smile, and gave me a big hug. And that was the first time seeing him in almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And it almost felt the same. He's like the big Papa type, Papa Bear of the show, and I still felt that kind of energy when I saw him. And I also saw that I thought it was nice to see him and Ira intermingling. I never really saw the two of them together and got to see the nature of their relationship. But the doc touches in on it when they show the two of them. And there's a real kinship between the two of them that I think is really cool. I like the fact that Rick Berman kind of is like Ira's big brother who feels like pleasantly annoyed by Ira's, brilliant mind and persistent ways. So I think that I like the nature of their relationship. It's kind of playful.
Where were those interviews shot?
It's kind of like our relationship.
Yeah, like you're Berman and I'm Ira. Yeah.
Where were those interviews shot, by the way?
Those were on at the studio on Hollywood and Wilcox, I think. It was Wilcox and
something around there, yeah.
In Hollywood?
Somewhere in Hollywood, yeah.
Okay.
It was actually really nice. Can I do we have time? Can I tell a little Rick Berman story? Because I only have one.
Please do.
Okay. So I feel like Rick Berman gets a lot of negative stuff towards him at times. And I had a complete opposite experience. First of all, he gave me a job as well as everyone else in that decision making. But when they sent me off to Starfleet, I thought I was done. I thought I was off the show. And I remember, because I don't really keep my thoughts and my emotions inside very well. So I remember kind of complaining about it. I'm done. This is it. And this is just down, getting, I'm talking to Jerry, who was our costume, not designer, but costume. What was he? Jerry Bono. He was our wardrobe. Yeah. And then maybe at the craft service table, maybe I even complained to Cirroc, but enough people heard me that somehow it got up to Rick Berman. And I get this call. It says, Aron, Mr. Berman wants to see you up in his office. And that's like getting a call from the principal, right? And I got really nervous. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. I'll go. I have to put on a brave face, but I'm like trembling inside. Oh my God, why does he want me to come up there? So I knock on the door and they go, yeah, come on in. He comes in and I sit down. I'm really scared. I'm like, why am I up here? I haven't talked to him in all the years and except at the rap parties. And he goes, hey, I hear you think you're off the show. And I go, well, you're sending me to Starfleet. So yeah, I guess that's exactly how I feel. So, listen, we love you. We love your work. You're not off the show. If anything, this will bring you more work. All right? I go, sure. Okay. Yeah. That's
like what Armin told you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a little bit more sternly. Armin told me for a different reason. He said, and I think Armin told me after Rick, Armin said, you're now part of the solution. So you'll work more because you're part of Starfleet. You're not part of the problem. You're not the conflict. You're the one that solves
a wise man.
Very wise. Armin was the ambassador of our show. He truly was.
He was the diplomat. He was the representative.
Yeah.
So if we needed to organize everybody, Armin would usually be the guy. Okay, we're gonna need to get together. We need to do this. We should sign this. We should petition for this.
He was our Norma Ray.
Yeah, he was the leader. As far as the group was concerned, he was like the diplomat who made sure that everything was kind of running smoothly amongst us.
Before we go, we do have a couple questions from our friends and patrons. If you'd like to hear those,
absolutely.
A couple comments. Cortina Womack says, "My husband wanted me to tell you that even as a Star Wars fan, he loved the documentary. What he didn't ask me to tell you was that he's never even seen a single episode of DS9, which just proves how great the movie was."
Wow, that's great. That's awesome. That's exactly what Cirroc was saying about his friend Ivory, right? Did I say that right?
Yeah, Ivory. And that's the thing about it is I think that if you watch the documentary and you realize the kind of groundbreaking chances that they took on this show, it kind of makes you want to watch the TV show.
Yeah.
Because you start to realize, wow, they tackled this issue, they tackled terrorism, they tackled this, they tackled politics, they tackled religion, they dealt with all of these, family, and you start to say, well, how come I missed that? And I think that was one of the biggest feelings that even the people who did watch it, even the people that are fans of our show that really support us, one of the biggest sentiments that I feel like collectively we have is that it should be, people feel like it should have been watched more, or it should have been recognized for what it was when it happened. And and that's the biggest takeaway is that's the biggest, most humbling honor for me when I hear that, is that people feel like it should have gotten so much praise or deserve so much praise. And that's really humbling because, like Aron said, coming from a show where we didn't get that, where we felt like we were casted aside or maybe overlooked or sometimes overshadowed by other shows, hearing now in so many years later, people really express that, they really wish that people gravitated to it more, gave it more of a chance. That's a compliment to everybody involved as a collective group. It's really, it's the biggest kind of honor that I can take away from the show, that even all these years later, that it's still impactful in people's lives. Some of the kids that are in the documentary weren't even born when we did the show. And
yes.
so you're seeing people,
all the kids, actually, all the little
kids. Yeah, all the kids, everybody under 19, basically. So and you've got all these younger people that are watching the show, and and completely getting impacted in the same type of ways, 20 on a whole nother 20-year cycle away. So I just think that, Aron, I could have done any show, and I could have been on any other show, that came on during the 90s. It could have been The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It could have been this show. It could have been that show. But I don't think that any other show that I could have done, that I could have been celebrating this many years later in a collective way with such a group of fans and family.
And had such an impact.
That's the biggest gift of this show. It is like literally the gift that keeps on giving. It continues to be rewarding. It continues to feel a level of satisfaction, and it continues to be impactful this many years down the road. And that's one of the greatest honors for me to be a part of. And I hope that I get a chance to be a part of something else like that, but nothing with this kind of legacy, this kind of history.
Right.
So it's almost just, it's just a real honor to be a part of such a large franchise and fan base that has really worked for integrity, good storytelling, and try to touch on these different issues that affect us in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of which, Seth Rogen says, after seeing the potential DS9 has for being remastered in HD and widescreen, CBS has a great property that can bring monthly subscriptions up. If they look at the DS9 remaster as a 7-year project, release each season 1 episode a week, that's 6 months of paid subscriptions. Have the remaster release scheduled to fill the gap between seasons of Discovery and Picard. That's an interesting thought. Just kind of remaster it and, release everything bit by bit. Also, Brian Michael says, spoilers. Okay, so be careful. Dr. Bashir is playing both sides. I think he's talking about the writer's room stuff. He is better at it now. He had the whole crew beamed out just before the explosion. They are in safekeeping until just the right moment to deal with whatever's going on. Nog, you are fine, he says.
See?
Then I don't know. I think Jake and his brother know I'm all right, but conspire to go, we need to make sure that guy is down. He is down.
Charles Bizel says, what do you think about the idea of season 8 of Deep Space Nine? Yeah, what do you guys think?
I thought it was exciting. I really thought the teaser was fantastic. It was really neat. I also liked how they told the story. It starts off this way. You think Quark is asking all these people to come back, and everyone's like, yeah, all right, I guess it's somebody's birthday. I guess we got to, head all the way back to DS9. And everybody's in different places. The only thing I didn't like, as a side note, is Jake seems so sad. They're saying he's so successful as a writer, but he's alone. And I don't know why they did the shower scene. I'm not sure why he ends up in the shower and then they go DS9. But I'm like, okay, probably looks buff.
Don't you, though?
But you want to see the gun show.
Yeah, I think so. But I didn't like that he was so sad. Because I don't know, it just looked that way in the animation. Maybe that's not the intent.
I felt that too, actually, but it did seem a little bit sad and poorly shaven.
Yeah, well, you were always a
kind of
slob.
accurate,
You were always a slob, okay? And I'm not around to help you
I
pick
was
up.
always a Spock. Is that what you said?
What?
I was always a Spock.
No, slob. Slob.
Thanks for enunciating that in your new microphone.
Well, I got my pop filter, so it's okay. But I really like then that everyone's there and Quark's all, it's not me, it's Nog. And then you have Nog say, I'm sorry I got you all here. And I really thought that was great because you see Nog in a different role as a captain, as a leader on this station. And personally speaking, I wanted to see how he worked, how the feeling, how he's connected to Sisko. Sisko is his mentor, so he's going to lead very similar to that, but in his own way. And I really wanted to see the relationship with him and Kira, and what that was like. And I really love that Molly was there, and that there's a relationship with her and Nog, most likely a working relationship, but she comes in sticking up for him. You don't know him. You don't know him like I do. And then, everything hits the fan. And then the whole way they told it through the animation, I'm like, okay, we saw the end of the episode. Where's the next one? I wanted to see the next one because, Sisko arrives and they did such a great thing with you and your brother where you're there and then they pull back and there's the statue. Of Sisko.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so cool. And then Kira's, something's going on with her, but you really don't know what. And it really felt like an 8th season of DS9 going X years forward. And I loved it.
Totally.
I mean, I didn't like dying. I really didn't. And I felt Ira was just a little too happy. He was a little gleeful.
A little flippant about it.
Yeah, he kept going, yeah, Nog dies. And every time he said it, he got a little bit more happy.
There was a glimmer in his eyes.
A little part of you died with it. Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, what is it with them blowing me up? They just want to keep blowing me up. There was, I don't know if you know this, but in Siege of AR-558, they had intended to blow off both of my legs. And I think it was Rick that said, no, just settle down. One leg will be fine. And, I think Ira was still a little bitter about that. He says, oh, well, now we're going to blow up his entire body.
We're going to take Martok's eye then. All right, so we got 2 more of these. One is, speaking of which, is, who was it? Garrett Swearingen says...
Is it Swearingen?
Swearingen, yeah. Says, I want season 8. I really, really want to see Nog get blown up. JK. That would be a waste of an awesome ship. LOL. JK again. But seriously, that concept for season 8 was brilliant. So he really knows how to razz you, I guess. And the last one here is the Lazarus effect says, watching the actors read the hate mail in What We Left Behind was interesting. Do you laugh it off or do you take it personally? A little of each. Love the doc.
You want to take this one first, Cirroc?
I've never received a piece of hate mail in my life, so I really don't know what it's like.
Never open your mailbox.
Never open it. I just throw the envelopes away straight up. No. No, it was funny reading the hate mail, but I don't really respond to hate mail because it's so
hateful.
It's so hateful, and then usually the things are nonsensical that they're complaining about. So it's like it's hilarious. But I do understand that people are entitled to their criticism or critique, and I think critique is something that's usually comes from a genuine place. It's something that usually based in whatever you're doing. So I don't mind critique. I just don't like the hateful speech.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I used to get a lot was people asking me about Will Wheaton. I used to get more questions about Will Wheaton than anybody.
Really?
Yeah, and that was the thing. I hope you're not going to be like Will Wheaton. And that was pretty much what I used to hear over and over again.
And you're like, I hope you're not going to be like that last fan.
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't even know who Will Wheaton is at that time, Yeah. So I didn't know how I could be like somebody who I didn't really know about.
Right. And you're powerless anyway because it's based on what the writers end up writing.
What they're writing, yeah. But the fans they were already pre-concerned with the possibility that I may be this know-it-all character who was always problem solving and had the right answer or solution for everything that they needed. And that was the thing that they always would say to me: "Don't be like Will Wheaton, don't give him the answer, or don't figure it all out, or don't be the boy genius." And no, I'm pretty dumb. Don't worry, I won't be like a boy genius at all.
You said Nog is smarter than me, so
Nog's smarter than me. So
for an illiterate guy,
what do you expect?
For an illiterate, I got to teach him how to read, but he'll figure it out in 3 years flat.
Exactly. So that was the only critique. The only bad responses I would get were Will Wheaton comments, but nothing really too bad.
Aaron, you don't take anything personally from it, right?
No, I mean, I didn't get any of that hate mail either, although I will say this real quick because I know we got to wrap this show up. I remember when I did Paper Moon, and I don't know where it was, and it was somewhere online, I think, that I would read a few reviews. And there were a few negative reviews about my performance on that episode, and I did take that personal. I am oversensitive, and I remember going, they were saying something like, "Oh, Nog isn't Nog. That's not Nog. Oh, it looks like Aaron got what did they say? He got a little too, I got my own episode and he didn't know how to handle it. Like I wasn't ready for it or something." I'm like, no, Nog's in a different space. I'm like saying this to myself. He's not in the same space. So he's not going to be the same person. He's in a different space. And of course, it wasn't like I could respond, and it's not positive.
I'm sorry about that, Aaron. I was drunk.
Was that you? Well, at least you're pretty young to start drinking, but
yeah. Well, you know what? It was a lot of pressure on me, especially with that Paper Moon episode.
But what would be funny right now is as somebody's watching that doc, there's going to be someone out there who watches the documentary, and one of us, if not all of the letters that are read, they're going to be like, "That was me. That was my letter. I love the show now. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said that." Someone's going to hear their letter read because at some point they're going to, I would think, watch the documentary. So I'd love to be a fly on the wall that moment.
And now they're yelling about Discovery.
Yes, they are.
Now they're like, God, why is it all so serialized? And
Burnham is not Burnham.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we do have to close it out on that note. But all around, scale of 1 to 10, what do you give the documentary in one word or less?
I'm going to give it a 9. I'd actually give it a 10 if I see the artwork for the cover.
I love that. What about you, Aaron?
To see the artwork of what?
Yeah, so like if the DVD artwork and what it would look like in its packaged form,
that would make it. That would push it to the 10.
If I'm up there on a poster, like on a billboard, and they've got me like center frame, absolutely a 10. Absolutely a 10.
Yeah, I have nothing negative to say about the doc, so I guess I would have to give it a 10. I should say a 9.5 because they blow up Nog. I would have to say
that's why I gave it a 10. Actually,
that's what I thought.
You're Nog out of 10.
But you know what? You didn't go there first. You said and then I saw your brain go, oh wait, no, that should be why it's a 10.
That's
because they blow up Nog.
Thank you for giving me that.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. I was watching. I was waiting, and you didn't. You kind of bit the fish, but then
I didn't go for it. I didn't make the connection until right then and there.
Yeah.
We don't condone biting fish for those of you at home.
But I think it's easy for us to give it a 10, at least Cirroc and I, because I think what was more wonderful to hear was Cirroc's friend Ivory say how that impacted him, especially someone who hasn't even watched the show, because that's really a good testament to the documentary. Is does it inspire somebody to go, I want to see that show now? And for the fans that have, go, yeah, that was great. I think it was Ira's tribute more so to the actors, so it's easy, I think, for us. I guess it's not easy for us, but I'd give it 9, 10, right up there.
Well, to me, it's like about the flow. It flowed well.
Yes,
I didn't sit there and felt bored, or it's like, oh, I wish this would go on. It wouldn't go on any longer. The thing was really, it gave me a lot of information. It flowed well, and it covered so much stuff that I felt like it was a good evaluation of itself.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think objectively, for a documentary, I'd give it a 10. Personally, as a fan, I give it about a 9 or 9.5 because I would have just enjoyed personally seeing 3 minutes more of positive stuff and 3 minutes less of any kind of little negativity. But that's just from the fan, my own personal fan point of view. But objectively, I give it a 10. Anyway, we got to run. This is our covering of the big What We Left Behind Deep Space Nine documentary with your stars, Cirroc Lofton, Aron Eisenberg. I'm Ryan T. Husk, and always remember the seventh rule.
Keep your ears open.
Keep the bells ringing.
Ring, ding, dong.